gosh, I really feel like I've picked up a lot on the way. I've learned a lot. I've had so many failures, but you learn from your failures way more than you learn from your successes. And so I took it as a challenge. I was like, what have I learned over the course of the last 17 years? And I wanted to come up with one really strong lesson a year. So I've got 17 things for you. 17 things learned over the course of 17 years in business. So you may disagree with me. I don't care. This is my video. So I just celebrated 17 years in business, which is something that I'm really proud of and also makes me feel really old. But we posted one of the social graphics online, and somebody said, well, what have you learned over the last 17 years? And it was a really jarring question because it felt almost like a challenge, because part of me feels like I'm still just as dumb and naive as I was when I first started out. And then, you know, that's the imposter syndrome, self-deprecating, self-loathing facet of me. But then the other half goes like, gosh, I really feel like I've picked up a lot on the way. I've learned a lot. I've had so many failures, but you learn from your failures way more than you learn from your successes. And so I took it as a challenge. I was like, what have I learned over the course of the last 17 years? And I wanted to come up with one really strong lesson a year. So I've got 17 things for you. 17 things learned over the course of 17 years in business. Now, the very first thing I'm going to preface with is the 17 years it's an interesting characterization of what has happened, because I haven't had the exact same business for 17 years. Like most agencies, and I think most businesses, it's gone through a series of evolutions. And so while I've been in business for 17 years, and I don't want to take that away from myself, it's been the same entity, the same phone number, the same address for most of it. The business model has evolved. And I think that that's actually, to my credit, it doesn't necessarily discredit the 17-year epoch. You know, I can't say, oh, I've been doing Google Ads for 17 years. Although I was doing it for most of them, it wasn't a core part of the service, if that makes any sense. And that's actually going to factor into the very first learning lesson that I want to share with you, which is, drum roll, entrepreneurship is not fulfillment. This is lesson number 1. This is one of the most important lessons that I ever had to learn. And it's something that I get more bullish with as I get older, and, you know, as I spin off more entities and get involved in more things. If you're going to open a bakery, you shouldn't be the baker. If you're going to open a mechanic shop, you shouldn't be the mechanic. If you're going to open a gym, you shouldn't be the personal trainer. When I first started my entrepreneurial career, I thought I needed to do the things that I was selling. And so, you know, I was trying to do, I could tinker on a computer, but I wasn't a software engineer by any means, but I was selling software. And so I went and I tried to learn software development. I'm selling websites, and I learned how to build websites, and I'm selling Google Ads, and I learned how to do Google Ads. And the issue with that is it puts you at a robust disadvantage, because now, first of all, your limitation to scale is you. Second of all, when you are the fulfillment house, you begin operating your business from the paradigm of the tactician. And the tactician's paradigm is actually a paradigm of limitation. And it has to be. This isn't an indictment on tacticians. But if you're the one doing the work, it's your job to manage the expectations and talk about all the reasons that it isn't going to work, or the limitations imposed on us, or how long it's going to take, or how much it's going to cost. And so when you're approaching business that way, it's a limiting view. But an entrepreneur should have an unlimited view. So I feel very strongly, you know, and if you are currently performing the fulfillment, that's okay. Go replace yourself in that role first before anything. So many entrepreneurs, when they start a business, if they're doing the fulfillment, they try to replace themselves with like finance or recruiting or legal or process. No, replace yourself with fulfillment. If you own a website agency and you're building the websites, farm that out. And I'll tell you what I did. You know, Solutions 8 is the number 1 Google Ads agency on the planet. Here's what's really funny. Fun little open air secret. When we started niching down into Google Ads, we didn't do fulfillment for Google Ads. We went and found the best agency we can find, a little agency out of Texas that ended up blowing up. And we just sold their services. We were just a sales engine. But it helped me with everything. It helped me with the messaging, the sales funnel, the conversations, client management, because we were still doing the client management piece, vendor expectation management, and I didn't have to do the really hard part, which was learn how to do the fulfillment. The fulfillment is available and accessible to you. So if you don't necessarily know how to get started, go white label somebody else's stuff. Go resell somebody else's stuff. The entrepreneurial piece is actually everything after the fulfillment. And that even includes improving upon the way that products or services are fulfilled upon. So you may disagree with me. I don't care. This is my video. Entrepreneurship is not fulfillment. And if you want a really good read on this topic, I'd go check out Michael Gerber's E-Myth Revisited. And in the E-Myth Revisited, he says, basically the same thing. People get into most industries because they love doing. I love to paint, so I'm going to go teach children painting. Well, guess what you will never do again if you go teach children painting? You will never paint. And if you've done something, a labor of love, then you know that. You've been privy to that. So entrepreneurship is not fulfillment. That's lesson number 1. Lesson number 2 is get really good at systems. It's ironic that this is the lesson that came up as I couldn't toggle over inside of my little screen share thing here. Get really good at systems. Where entrepreneurship is not fulfillment, and I don't believe the entrepreneur should be doing most of what's happening inside of an organization, I do think that if you were to take inventory of the tasks, of the skills, of the proficiencies that an entrepreneur should be good at, it's the systems piece, because systems are what scale. And without systems, you actually don't have a business. You have a room of people who are willing to do what you tell them to do. But it's the systems that make things function. And the systems are what make the business an actual functional entity. You often hear people refer to businesses as, I really want a well-oiled machine. I've heard that analogy very, very often. I think the very first time I heard it was in a Franklin Covey book. But it's been, it's turned into a cliche. We want a well-oiled machine. Well, the machine is nothing more than a collection of components tethered together by systems. And it's you, the entrepreneur, that needs to get good at systems. That doesn't mean you need to build them. I don't build any of our automation here at Solutions 8. I've got 2 people, Yvonne, our CTO, Julianne, our director of automation. Both of them brilliant. But I know systems really well. I'd say it's one of my strongest skill sets. And I know systems well enough to know how to lead and direct the systems that I want. For our customer onboarding, I really want it so that when somebody fills out this form, this goes to the finance team, this goes to the client management team, this goes to the strategy team, and this goes to the client manager, to the client in these ways for these reasons. So I've defined the system. You want to get good at systems. And doing so puts you in the position of unencumbering yourself. Because what's nice about somebody who's good at systems is it forces you to view the entity from the outside. And if you're ever within the entity, you've heard this all the time, work on your business, not in your business. Well, getting good at systems, that's what that is working on your business. And so where entrepreneurship is not fulfillment would be working inside of your business. Where you're working on systems, that's when you're working on your business. Which leads me to number 3, recruiter and a banker. This came from Ryan Dice. Ryan Dice over at Digital Marketer. He's been a friend and a mentor of mine for a long, long time. And, I was kind of complaining to him actually at one point. I was like, man, I don't do anything I like to do anymore. I'm just running around trying to find the best people and manage the money. And he laughed and he goes, yeah, on a long enough timeline, everybody in business just turns into a recruiter and a banker. And I thought gosh, that makes so much sense. You are going to, as you scale, need people, which is one of the lessons that I want to talk about here subsequently. And you're going to need to really understand the financial piece of business, which is another one of the lessons that I want to talk about. But really what I've handed you are the 3 roles, maybe, of entrepreneurship. Systems architect, recruiter, banker. And either get really good at those roles or find somebody, a partner or somebody you can delegate to that is really good at those roles, which leads me to the next rule, which is delegation. If you can't delegate every task that takes place in your company, you don't own a business, you own a job. If you can't delegate every task that takes place in your company, you don't own a business. Everything that happens in your organization should be delegatable. And if you tell me oh, well, gosh, I'm a high-end Salesforce consultant and I'm the only one that knows how to do these things, great. Well, that's not a business. You can't walk away from that business for 30 days, come back, have it be more efficient, and you be making more money, because that would be a business. So as you walk through your day, a really fun thought exercise is to look at your calendar or your task list, which should be the same thing, by the way. If your task list isn't your calendar, then there's just a whole bunch of lists of stuff that's not going to get done. Learn to time block, learn to bring your tasks onto your calendar, and everything on your calendar should be delegatable. Every task you undertake should be delegatable. And delegation is actually the last bastion. It's the last option. The first question, and I learned this from Steve Napolitano. You ask yourself 3 questions anytime you're looking at any task or any calendar event. Question number 1, can I eliminate this? Do I actually have to do this? And as you get more sophisticated as an entrepreneur, you start to realize how often the answer is yes. Question number 2, can I automate this? And that goes back to being good at systems. Can I automate this? And then question number 3, if the answer is no to question 1 and 2, can I delegate this? By the time you get to question number 3, you should have nothing left on your task list. Your job as the entrepreneur is to have margin, to have the ability to dream and grow and meet people and network and read and, just look at what's going on. You should not, this whole hustle culture thing, which is, it's funny because you'll never not be busy because you're an entrepreneur. That's what you do. But you shouldn't be busy with other people's priorities. I love, Brendan Burchard says this. He says that your email inbox is just a list of other people's tasks. It's just other people's task lists. So stay out of other people's task list. Delegate everything inside of your business. The next rule, and this gets a little touchy-feely, but I'm going to get a little touchy-feely. People are the most important part of business. People are so critically important on so many levels that it gets religious. Obviously, right? Like obviously, people are the most important thing, and important in a positive way and important in a negative way too. But when it comes to the positive piece, and I look at my business, for example, all an agency has to offer, an agency can only sell 3 things, or a combination of these things: processes, programs, people. Processes are easily commoditizable. You can get all my processes right now for free online. We've given them away 100 million times. Programs, easily commoditizable. SaaS is the most scalable business in the whole wide world. Anybody can go build and sell software. People. That's the key. People. Really good, motivated, hardworking, people that care, people that are well-trained, people that live inside of a culture that they trust. People. Build your business around people. And it's really interesting because very often you build your business around the people that are your customers. And I think that maybe you should build a business around the people that are your staff. One member of my staff handles about 30 customers. That's when we talk about scale. So do I want one customer to be able to influence a member of my staff negatively who's now going to go spread that across 29 other customers? No, I don't. So the whole customer is always right mantra. It's not that we don't treat our customers with kindness and respect. We absolutely do. But hierarchically speaking, it's my staff. It's the people that are a part of Solutions 8 that actually make Solutions 8 more than any other single customer. Find a way to find and cultivate amazing people. I've got almost 100 employees, and I'm so blown away by how amazing all of them are. They're just this group of rock stars. And I've got a really good hiring system. I've given it away online. You can have it. So I have a system for finding these folks. But, so much of it has to do with the fact that I just find people that are brilliant at what they do, and I get out of their way because people are so, so, so important. Which leads me to the next one. You should be the dumbest person who works for you. And this sounds a lot like lip service. This sounds like something that people say from the stage or from the pulpit or whatever, and they don't necessarily mean it. It's just, it's one of those fun cliches that's it's virtue signaling in a managerial sense. Here's why it's true. Everybody that works for me is smarter than I am along the axis of analysis for which they work. Does that make sense? That was a little flowery. I'll try again. Everybody who works for me is better at their job than I would be. Everybody who works for me is smarter than I am at the thing that they're doing. And if they're not, I'm actively working to train them to be smarter than I am. I hear so often from peers and even when I was doing a little bit of coaching, people would be like, oh gosh, it's so hard to find good people. And, if you want something done, do it yourself. Ugh. Sounds like you've done this poorly. You want to go find people. And generally speaking, when I hear from people like that, what they've done is they've surrounded themselves with people that aren't as capable on purpose, and they don't even realize it because they're threatened. They're threatened. They don't want to be around people that are competent or strong or smarter or better, because then it means that they're going to have to rely on those people. Well, actually, what a wonderful place to be. You're relying on these people, and as long as you trust those folks, like, gosh, your business is going to grow so much faster, so much better, so much with more structural fortitude than if you try to do everything yourself. So go find people that are better than you at whatever it is that they're doing and put them in those positions. That's the other thing too. I love that quote. I think it's Einstein. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it'll spend its whole life thinking it's stupid. I've had employees that weren't good at stuff, but they were amazing at other things. Well, That's a real easy solution there. It's like, all right, I'm going to take this off your plate and I'm going to move you over here. My business partner is a good example. My business partner, John Moran, smartest Google Ads guy in the whole world. He's the reason we're the number one ranked Google Ads agency. He is a literal savant, literal genius. He was my employee before he was my business partner. John has a real hard time with processes. You know, the TCM reports. He just doesn't do them. Just does not do them. And a petulant manager type would be like, John's not doing his job. We're going to fire him. Well, I just lost the best resource I've ever had in my entire life. Instead, I decided, all right, John doesn't do these things, but he's massively valuable. So then I hired somebody to follow him around and do those things for him. So, you know, we have all these things that need to be updated inside of our system, and everything's run off of Airtable, and, you know, a myriad of managerial processes that John doesn't do. It's just not the way his head works. And, you know, you want to be right, or do you want to be successful? And so surround yourself with people that are phenomenal, and then enable them to be, equip them to be the best that they can possibly be. And sometimes that means getting out of their way. And, you know, don't have a quixotic dedication to the rules. Speaking of people, only do business with people you trust on a handshake. Only do business with people you trust on a handshake. I'm almost 40 years old. I've been burned so many times. And it's interestingly, looking back, I usually kind of knew. You know, you usually go into it going like, man, this person's a little shady, or there's something not right here, or I just don't have a right gut feeling. Not always. I've been snuck attack too. But if you don't feel right about somebody, anybody, vendor, client, employee, partner, just jump ship. It's life is too short and people are too important. And the people you surround yourself with are going to influence you more than anybody else. You spend more time at work than you do with your family. So if you don't trust somebody, run, jump, and hide. Now, that doesn't mean that you're silly. Do business with people you would do business with on a handshake, but paper up anyway. Get it in writing anyway. So, hey, I trust you. I'm really excited about working with you. Just to make sure you and I can manage expectations and we're on the same page, let's put it down in writing. It doesn't have to be great big legalese. Everybody hires a lawyer. Let's put an email together. This is my understanding. This is your understanding. Anybody who doesn't want to do that or makes you feel uncomfortable doing that, run away from them. I mentioned an agency that we outsourced our work to out of Texas. Interesting thing about that agency is we were really good friends with them. We'd go down to the city where they were, and we'd have barbecue together, and I was on the phone with the CEO every day for a year and a half. He and I were either chatting back and forth or talking back and forth. I thought he was one of my best friends. We ended up scaling outside of their abilities to fulfill, caused some friction, and you know, they have a whole side to their story. So maybe we didn't handle it properly or whatever, but we basically sent over a letter saying, hey, we need y'all to be able to perform better. If you can't, we're going to find somebody else. We gave them 180 days notice or something close to that. They turned around and they gave us a 30-day notice, which is all we were contracted for. So in 30 days, as I'm scaling up, I think I have 100 clients at this point or something close to it. I'm going to lose my only vendor, and I have no contractual recourse. And my very strong opinion is, and maybe I can be forgiven for attempting to assume somebody's motivations, but I think they saw, we just created our biggest competitor. Let's try to put them out of business. And then I had to create an entire Google Ads agency, a fulfillment agency house in 30 days. So, that whole piece, entrepreneurship isn't fulfillment. Well, I'll make sure you have fulfillment covered. And I didn't have a backup plan. And I didn't have that because I thought I could trust these folks. So do business with people that you feel like you can trust, but paper up anyway. Because if I had it in writing, hey, if anything ever goes wrong, this is how long we have the transition out. They stole accounts that we owned. There were MCC accounts with my name on them. They said Solutions 8. And they wouldn't hand them over. They actually locked us out of them. So, interesting things happen. Trust but verify. Paper up. Get it in writing. And that goes for a lot of things. There's, if you're hiring a vendor or an employee or a contractor, most of my employees, 90% of them are offshore somewhere in countries where employment agreements aren't enforceable. I have them sign one anyway, just to make sure we're on the same page and we're all talking about the same thing. Speaking of, next lesson, life is too short to work with people who drain you. So if you have somebody who's, and it doesn't matter, your biggest client, most amount of profitability, your best employee, a business partner that's just a rock star salesperson, if you get a knot in your stomach when they call you, that's the sign. um, what's interesting is they're always costing you more than they're giving you, and you just don't know it. I had a business associate who was like this. She wasn't unkind to me, but she took more than she gave when it came to, energy and discussions, and it just always felt very combative. And, even though we were friends and we were growing a business together, I never felt like I was being fairly treated or getting the whole story, or it always felt like I was being maneuvered. And what I found is I started avoiding her. I started working later in the day, and kind of planning my time around when I knew she wasn't going to be there, because I constantly felt like I was under attack, and it hurt my ability to perform. It hurt the growth of our business. And, even though she's bringing in all this business, it just wasn't worth it. And when I finally made moves to resolve that situation, and I don't want to mischaracterize her, she wasn't a bad person. We just had personality types that just clashed. They just didn't work together. And I told my wife every day for a year and a half, I'm like, man, I'm so glad I'm out of that. But you don't realize it when you're in it. So I'm trying to offer this to you now. I want to give you permission. If there's somebody who drains you, and that's the note for me, is if I see their name in an email, or if I see their name come up on a text message, or they call and I have a negative response, that's when I know I need to not be in this relationship. A little more tactical. Next lesson, niche down into excellence. I've built 4 multi-million-dollar agencies. I've had 2 exits, and it's all come from niching down. We had the highest performing real estate investment campaign on the planet for 7 years. That's Google Ads for real estate investing. Like, you want to talk about, you can't get more niche than that. We've got an agency right now that serves Montessori schools. There's only 4,000 or 4,500 accredited Montessori schools in the United States. You can't get more niche than that. Solutions 8 started as a full funnel agency. We were offering website development and graphic design and content creation. And as I started cutting off services, I started making more money and scaling up. And then it was John who decided, hey, let's just be Google Ads specific. And when we did that, unbelievable growth. We almost couldn't control it. Now, you'll notice that there's 2 niche down into excellence. Here's what this means. Niche down, choose a niche. And there's two axes for niching, by the way. There's the x-axis is niching down into a service offering, and the y-axis is niching down into an industry. And so, an example would be a Google Ads agency. So I'm not just a marketing agency. I'm not a traffic agency. I'm not a paid traffic agency. I'm a Google Ads agency. Bam, niche down into my service. And then you might say, well, I only do Google Ads for landscapers, or I only do Google Ads for e-commerce, which would be a broader niche. You don't have to niche down into both. But niching into both, like, when we do Google Ads for Montessori schools or Google Ads for real estate investors, that's when you get to be better than anybody else has ever been. Niche down into excellence. We're the best Google Ads agency in the world. Why? Because all we do is Google Ads. I actually don't know another agency. I know a couple of freelancers and, let's say smaller organizations, but like an actual, a group of people of, let's say 10 or 15 or more, right? Like a substantive sized organization. I don't know another agency that does only Google Ads. All of them do paid traffic. Google Ads and Facebook and whatever, or Google Ads and Bing, or maybe they do Google Ads and funnels. Or because we did only Google Ads, it was so easy for us to get good. It was all we were doing. It was Gary Keller's one thing. Niche down into excellence. It's been the most important lesson I've ever learned in my entrepreneurial life. Maybe it should have been first. Is finding your niche. And there's no niche that's too small. And there's so many niches that are underserved. I think there's going to be an entrepreneurial gold rush towards little niche businesses. And I go back and forth between niche and niche, by the way, because I don't know how it's pronounced. And there's like, nobody wants to work for like an Italian restaurant, for instance. A little mom and pop, single location Italian restaurant gets no love from marketing agencies. They're all going after dentists and doctors and lawyers. But what about nail salons or coffee shops or dry cleaners? Nobody's going after them. So there's this huge market. And if you were to create, real phenomenal collateral for them, you'd have a blue ocean. Niche down into excellence. Get really good at what you're doing. Get really good at what you're offering. And if you don't know what to do, the next lesson is the corridor principle. I spent so much time as a young man who wanted to go into business for myself trying to figure out what I was going to do, trying to figure out what the next move was, trying to figure out what the best idea was. And the problem with that is you're in the bleachers watching the game. And until you're in the game, you don't know what the play is going to look like. And the corridor principle says that you're not going to discover the real opportunity until after you've already entered the corridor. And if you don't know what to do, by the way, go drive an Uber. I really mean that. I really mean that. If you don't know what to do, if you have no idea where to go from a business perspective, go drive an Uber. Uber drivers get to have more conversations with more interesting people every day than I think anybody else. Go work for whatever, throw a dart at a map and go work for wherever that dart hits. Go work for a financial consulting firm, or go work at a manufacturing plant, or go work at Target, or go work at an Amazon fulfillment center. Here's what's going to happen. You're in the corridor, and all of a sudden you're going to be like, gosh, the way they stock these shelves is really inefficient. Or the way this company's getting their leads is weird. Or these guys aren't answering their phone. I wonder if I did a phone answering service for financial consultants specifically, if that's something they'd be willing to pay for, especially if I could do the lead intake, qualification, and scheduling, and they're actually paying to schedule. The corridor principle says that you're going to find all the opportunities after you've entered the corridor, and that's been so true in my life. It's comical. I didn't know that a Google Ads agency would be the most successful facet until I was already running a full funnel agency. So give yourself permission to start poorly, start without a plan, a fully formed plan. Don't be stupid. But just get out there and start playing. And the odds that the corridor you enter is the corridor you stay in are very low. That's okay. Good. In the very beginning, I want to outsource medical and legal transcription. And somehow that led me to a Google Ads agency. Like, what an evolution. But I had to get out on the field before I was going to learn that lesson. So get into the corridor and then pay attention. And what you'll notice is when you're in the corridor, the opportunities are problems. So when you're in the corridor and you're at work or you're doing whatever you're doing and you run into a problem, get excited about the problems. Get excited about problems. Problems are the entrepreneur's fuel. That's what brings the opportunity. So when you encounter problems, train yourself on a gut level, on a physical level. Pay attention to your body, by the way. I think it's so important to really, I was talking about earlier, if you get a knot in your stomach when somebody calls you, those signs that's 2 trillion years of evolution at play. It sounds so like hippy dippy Sedona magic rock bullshit, but it's not. It's like there's a reason that your body responds to things. And it's because we used to be chased by bears and velociraptors, and we needed to have the instincts in order to handle them. And now we're ignoring those instincts, and we shouldn't at all. When you encounter a problem, train yourself, train your mind, and train your body to get excited. And then, this is the most important part, people naturally ignore problems. I don't know why. All of us, we procrastinate, we put it off, we hide it, we try not to pay attention to it. Train yourself to melt problems. I learned this from my friend Calvin Corelli. Calvin is the CEO of Simplero, phenomenal SaaS product. I have 3 businesses built on the back of Simplero. It's an unbelievable piece of machinery. And I worked with Calvin for about 6 months, maybe a little bit longer than that. I've never met a human who tackles problems with a vengeance, with a hatred, but also with an excitement. And what's funny is I would be looking at this problem, and for me it would be this titanium cube that couldn't be opened, cracked, dismantled, and Calvin would just sit there and I would watch him in real time just melt it. And it would just melt away into vapor, into ether. And it's because he just got obsessive. He didn't know any more about the problem than I did. Maybe he's smarter than I am, but all of a sudden he would start to Google it, and he'd start to search, and he'd call people that had encountered it before, and he'd ask them what they did. And, he would just get obsessive with solving these problems. And then once he solved a problem, guess what he has? If he wants it, he has a business. Every problem you solve is a business. Every problem you solve is a business. So get excited about solving problems. This is not a glitch. I'm interrupting the video you're watching because I need to remind you that I'm always looking for people to join our team. So if you're passionate about Google Ads and you want to work with the best Google Ads agency on the planet, please go to so8.com/apply. Speaking of working with the best Google Ads agency on the planet, if you're having trouble with Google Ads and you want professional help, that's what we do. You can go to so8.com, that's SOL8.com, to apply for your free, no obligation action plan. And if I've given you any level of value at all, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel. That's how we juice the YouTube algorithm so they actually know that I know what I'm talking about. If you have questions, comments, concerns, or confessions, hit me below in the comments. And now, back to your regularly scheduled program. Next lesson. Don't be the expert, be the guide. I don't run Google ad campaigns. I haven't run an end-to-end Google ad campaign since before we niched down into Google ads, and I don't pretend to. Instead, I position myself as the perpetual student, and then I present what it is that we're learning. I've got 200 clients and 80 some odd employees inside of Solutions 8 specifically, and we manage $100 million in ad spend, and so I have a lot of information, and I just present the information distilled through the eyes and the lens of the experts. Your imposter syndrome comes from the fact that you're probably an imposter, and it's honesty and integrity that's showing itself. And so all you have to do is be honest and integrous about the way you present yourself. I really love what Brene Brown said. If you haven't read Daring Greatly, by the way, it's unbelievable. But Brene Brown said, I'm going to butcher this, but she basically said, I'm a tenured map maker, but amateur traveler. Or maybe it's, I'm an expert map maker, but amateur traveler. That's okay. That's okay. So you can be really good at kind of showing people how things are done, but then when you go to do it yourself, you're still learning. As long as you present yourself that way. Those people that are super polished and pretend like everything's perfect and they've never failed, like those are the people that are going to crash and burn, and you kind of actually hope to see it a little bit. But when you show up with authenticity and reality and truth, and you're just like, hey, I kind of figured this thing out and it's pretty cool. Let me know if you have any questions. I think people really resonate with that. Next lesson, far more specific, focus on recurring revenue. If you're building a business, it's as hard to sell $1,000 one time as it is to sell $1,000 a month. And that will always be true. Focus on recurring revenue. That's why you get multiples when you exit. SaaS companies are trading at 50x, 50x EBITDA. It's unbelievable. E-commerce, consumable e-commerce specifically, are trading at 10, 20, 30x, depending on how they're doing. Agencies are now starting to trade at 6, 8, 10, 12, 13x for larger agencies. It's because of recurring revenue. Build recurring revenue models. It doesn't have to be the only thing you do, but make sure there's a recurring revenue component to what you're doing, because I can tell you as a paid traffic guy, customer acquisition is the most expensive thing you'll ever do. It's the most expensive thing you'll ever do. It's more expensive than manufacturing. It's more expensive than ideation, R&D. It's the most expensive thing you'll ever do in almost every business. In most businesses that we see, customer acquisition is actually more expensive than cost of goods. Wow! So why wouldn't you put yourself in a position to where you only have to pay that once, and then you get the benefit every subsequent time? Focus on recurring revenue. Go find a recurring revenue business and get good at the game of money. I can't tell you how many buddies I have that, they do really well. And I've been in business 17 years now, y'all. I've seen this where I've got buddies that are making more than me, but they're spending more than they make, or they're spending very close to all of it. And there's this game that you play, especially as a young person. Young men and women have to be really careful with this, because it's so tempting to want people to know that you're successful. And so you go and you get the Rolex, because, Rolex had that whole thing about climbing the mountain, right? They had that ad that was brilliant. It was like, you climbed Everest and you want people to know, buy the Rolex. But there's a saying, my father's from Pakistan, and he has all these old folksy Pakistani sayings that, they're kind of funny, but they make a lot of sense. And one of the sayings he has is, if you're going to have an elephant as a pet, you have to have big doors. Right? And I know that sounds kind of silly, but if you really think about it, there's a lot of wisdom there. If you're going to have an elephant as a pet, you have to have a big door. Well, if you need big doors, then you have to have high ceilings. And if you have high ceilings, you have to have a big house. And if you have a big house, you have to have a big plot of land. If you have a big plot of land, you have to have a fence. And you go all the way back to this elephant, and your man, just don't get the freaking elephant, right? I had a buddy who hopefully never watches this video, and he's got 3 or 4 supercars. He's got the Ferrari and the Lamborghini and the Audi A8, and he came out to dinner with us in San Diego, and he spent 45 minutes trying to figure out where to park, because he didn't want to park somewhere where his $1 million car was going to get dinged. And I'm not wealth shaming. I'm just saying that until you can afford to truly, without concern or worry, spend, it's really important that you realize that money is the fuel for your entrepreneurial endeavors. Don't be stupid with it. There are 2 types of money. This is my rule, and you can make it your rule too if you want. There are 2 types of money. There's money that your time buys you, and there's money that your money buys you. There's money that your time buys you, and there's money that your money buys you. And the money for time trade is the most miserable trade you'll ever make in your entire life. And I'm saying this as somebody who's done it for a very, very long time. What you want to do is, the money that your time buys you can only be used for the absolute bare necessities of life, and then to purchase things that make you more money. So this might be like a rental house, or annuities or bonds, or whatever it is that you want to invest in, right? So the money that your time makes you, used for the necessities, and I mean the bare necessities, by the way. So if you want, the big house on the hill and the luxury car, that's not a necessity. It's a roof over your head, safe place to sleep. If you want your kids to go to school, organic food, necessities, and then value producing assets, which result in the money your money buys you. Because when you have businesses or assets or real estate that's yielding money, now this money, what are you allowed to do with that money? Whatever you want. You want a Ferrari, buy a Ferrari. That's great. Buy 7 of them. One for every day of the week, different colors. Doesn't matter. This is money that your money buys you. But you have to get good at the game of money first. And I know that that's not fun, but this is how you accomplish financial freedom. Speaking of, don't get romantic about the way you make your money. I'm a Google Ads agency right now. I can tell you that Google Ads is marching its way towards forced obsolescence at some point in the future. And all that means to me is I'm going to have to evolve. Now, do I think Google Ads is going away? No, I don't think that at all. I think that the way that we run Google Ads is going to change. But, I was an SEO agency before Google Ads, and before SEO, we were, heavy into software, and before, you know what I mean? Like, don't get romantic about the way you make your money, because especially in this world, regardless of what industry you're in, it's going to evolve. Blockbuster got real romantic about the way they made their money. Loved late fees. Banks got real romantic about the way they made their money. And they're being usurped on a number of levels. Don't get romantic about the way you make your money. Get romantic about serving the people that you love to serve. And what that will do is it will yield the subsequent opportunities, the direction that you potentially need to go. And that leads me to the last lesson, which again is a little touchy-feely, but I don't care. It's love. And I know that's a word that turns everybody off. It's, in our core values at Solutions 8, we have truth, responsibility, and heart. And I said heart because I'm a coward. And I was afraid to put love because it felt like, oh God, we're going to have to put up with with this idiot. But I don't care as much anymore. I think love is so important. It's what animates us. You do things because you love them. You play an instrument. You play piano because you love piano. You play with your kids because you love your kids. You seek out your spouse because you love your spouse. And when you do things well, you learn to love them. Exercise, for instance. I didn't really like to exercise in the beginning, but I found a way to love it. Khalil Gibran has a quote that I use in all my hiring. I ask people to tell me what it means to them, and he says it's from The Prophet, which is a really worthy read, by the way. But the quote is, "Work is love made visible." Find a way to instill love in everything that you do. And if you can't, you're doing the wrong thing. And I'm not saying this as a judge. I'm telling you this as somebody who's been a victim of my own designs. I have done things in the past that made a ton of money that I didn't love. I've had endeavors and entrepreneurial pursuits that did very well, but they lacked the love component. And they were, at best, neutral, but at worst, very often soul-sucking. I'm spending time with people that I don't like, in rooms that I don't like, doing things that I don't like, and who cares how much money you're making if you don't love it? Find a way to love what you do. Find a way to love the people you do it for. Find a way to love the people you do it with. Find people that you love to be around. Like, make love a central theme. Make it primary. Make it foundational. And then you can go after things like, financial success and growth and scale. But it's okay to stop and say, you know what, I really want to love this. I really want to love my days. For so often, I would torture myself, truly torture myself by forcing myself to do things that I didn't want to do because I wanted to be successful. Wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I'd run through this insane laundry list of habits, which actually, what's really funny is I love waking up early now. I love waking up early. But I didn't used to, because the things that I made myself do, I didn't love them. And I was doing them just because I just wanted to be wealthy. And it cost me, and it actually cost me more than it earned me, because you'll wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, work hard 12 hours a day, every day for your entire life, you'll be successful for sure, but you'll be successful at a cost. And it wasn't until I started integrating love into my daily themes that the success I experienced, it wasn't just sweeter, it was actually more scalable, because I didn't fall off every time. If you're doing something you don't love, the minute you lose motivation, you lose the ability to do that thing. And you lose motivation all the time. Motivation is the most fickle master of any. So find something that you love and focus on that. And if you can't find the thing you love to do, and this is my experience generally, especially when you're younger, it's hard to find the thing you love to do because you're afraid to commit. You ask a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? And, they have all these dreams, and all of them are funny, right? It's always like, oh, I want to be an astronaut or a zookeeper. And that's great. But then as people get a little bit older, post-pubescent, they stop answering that question because they get fearful. I used to. I didn't want to put myself in a box. It's like, oh, I don't want to commit just yet. So if you don't want to commit to the service, that's fine. Commit to a group of people. Who do you love as people? Maybe you love athletes, or you love stay-at-home moms, or you love Montessori schools, or, you love people that are struggling with autism, or, who do you love? And then find a way to serve them. But build love into your life. Make it an ever-present, ongoing, recurring theme. And surround yourself with people that you can love. And that's really weird too. I don't tell my employees this often because I don't want to get sued, but God, do I love these people. Most of them. There's a couple that annoy me. Hopefully they don't watch this. They know who they are. I have nearly 100 employees now, and it's just every time I'm on the phone with one of them, every time I learn a little bit more about what they're doing. I was on the phone with a young man he's making a movie, and it was just so much fun to see him light up. I'd done some film in the past, and so he asked me to connect just for some advice, and I didn't give him any good advice. I didn't help him at all, but it was really fun for me to watch him do this thing that he really cared about. It made our interaction on every other level, whenever they happen, it makes them more real, because now I know you. I know the things that you care about. So find a way to surround yourself with people that you love. Find a way to serve people that you love. Find a way to do things that you love. And it doesn't have to be, they don't have to be sexy. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, everybody wants to be an actor, or everybody wants to paint, or everybody wants to work with music, or everybody wants to help kids. Nobody wants to empty the garbage. Nobody wants to clean out the gutters. Nobody wants to, fix septic tanks. But you can find love there. There's love in the septic tank. You know what I mean? Like there's if you're an emergency plumber, if you're whatever it is, there's so many ways for you to find the love that exists within the confines of what you do because of the value you're providing to other people. So find a way to embed love into your life. And then I think success really becomes inevitable. Then it's just a matter of time because it's infectious. People know, they can tell. This went way longer than I thought it was. I wanted to get one of these a minute. I thought this was going to be a 17-minute video. It's a 41-minute video. But I do my best. I hope this was helpful. I'd love to know what you've learned on your journey through life and through business. I gave you my 17 over 17 years. What are the fun lessons that you have to offer me? We can start a dialogue in the comments. Other than that, I'll see you all tomorrow. This is the scariest video that I've ever recorded. I am uncomfortable with this topic because I'm giving away the thing that I'm most proud of from an entrepreneurial perspective. However, I think this could be of immense value to a lot of people.